What was Christopher Walken fond of eating just before going to set to act with his co-stars in the 1995 cult classic, The Prophecy? This movie is about immortal angels. What other beloved movie did writer-director Gregory Widen write about immortal beings? In what way did actor Viggo Mortensen help with the script of this film? These and more questions will be answered on this episode of
Bad Look Cinema, the podcast.
I am an angel. I kill firstborns while their mamas watch. I turn cities into salt. I even, when I feel like it, rip the souls from little girls, and from now till kingdom come, the only thing that you can count on in your existence is never understanding why. Hi, my name is Zoe. It's spelled Z-O or Z to the O for those of you outside of the U.S. Welcome back, friends. This is the 198th episode of Backlook Cinema, the podcast, where we take a look back at the movies of yesteryear, especially the movies of the latter half of the last millennium. If you like what you're about to hear, then please tell your family, tell your friends, and tell your classmates, tell your teacher who's almost like a part of your family. Tell your shaman, and you can tell even that tall, dark, handsome dude about Backlook Cinema, the podcast. So, on this episode, I wanted to explore a movie genre that I like. It's about the movie The Prophecy, and this is a particular type of horror film that deals with demons and angels. There's something about movies that feature angels, demons, and the devil that appeals to me. I grew up in a Baptist household, and I would imagine what these beings would be like if I ever ran into one. I always found it interesting to see different interpretations of these spiritual things on film. I even remember this little-known TV show in the late 90s called Brimstone, starring John Glover as the devil who got a mortal man to chase after demons who escaped hell. Have you ever seen some of these shows or movies? Have you seen Lucifer, Constantine, Good Omens, Legion, Touched by an Angel, or Supernatural? And there are many others. I haven't seen all of them, but I feel like I've seen enough of them. There are a host of others, all with a different take on how these heavenly creatures are supposed to look and behave. For example, I think that Constantine had one of the best depictions of the devil, while Legion had one of the most interesting versions of angels. Now, we check out The Prophecy, with its unusual take on angelic imagery. There are 5 movies in the Prophecy franchise, but only the first one premiered in theaters, while the others went straight to video in the heydays of video rentals. I imagine now it would be like they're going straight to Netflix or straight to Amazon Prime, and so on and so forth. I never watched the sequels, because I'm prejudiced against direct-to-video entertainment, especially back then. But I enjoyed the first movie, so let's talk about it. In the opening credits, The Prophecy, 1995. Gabriel is no ordinary angel. He's the angel of death. Gabriel has a specific mission in mind. He intends to fulfill a prophecy that will bring an end to a war that is raging in heaven. He needs the soul of a very unique man, but his pursuit of this soul is hampered by an angel who opposes him, a pesky human detective, and a troublesome school teacher. Gabriel will do whatever it takes to find this soul and fulfill this prophecy. It doesn't matter how many people have to die or how many angels have to be destroyed. He will let nothing stand in his way in pursuit of this lost soul. This movie was released September 1st, 1995, produced by Dimension Films and First Look Pictures. It grossed over $16 million in the US and Canada on a reported budget of $8 million. That's not a lot of cheddar. Interestingly, it's not a lot of money, but it spawned sequels. I think that is the definition of a cult classic. It's like if you keep spitting out sequels, even if the sequels didn't appear in the movie theater, even if it went direct to video, there's something about the movie that draws people to it. It must have did gangbusters on the video market because, in the theaters, $16 million, from an $8 million budget is considered a flop. And if you convert that into today's dollars, adjusting for inflation, it would have grossed over $34 million and the box office would have been $17 million. What's interesting about this movie is that, as I said, the budget was $8 million, but it made $7 million in its opening weekend. So it made like 90% of the budget and half of its earnings in the first weekend. And for some reason, it just kind of fell off. So I don't have an answer for that. Maybe that's one of the reasons why it had so many sequels. This movie starred Christopher Walken as Gabriel. You may have seen him in The Deer Hunter, Catch Me If You Can, The Rundown, one of my favorite Christopher Walken performances, Hairspray, and Dune Part 2. Definitely my least favorite Christopher Walken performance. See, I love Christopher Walken because there is a Christopher Walken-ness about him. And in most of his roles, that works perfectly well. But if he's going to do a period piece or something that is supposed to have a veneer of a period piece like Dune is, it doesn't really work for me. Because it's like if he tries to act outside of himself, then he just kind of looks like he's doing a caricature of himself, and it doesn't really work. Like Dune felt like an actor doing a bad impression of Christopher Walken. but that's kind of how I felt. But in most other things, he's pretty awesome. We also have Elias as Detective Thomas Daggett. And when I saw him on the screen, I thought he looked familiar. And this happens sometimes. I'm watching a movie and I see an actor and I'm thinking, who is this person? And it'll bother me until I can figure out where I last seen that person. And in this case, it didn't take long. He's been in The Thin Red Line, which I didn't watch, so I wouldn't recognize him. He was in Shooter, again, didn't watch, so I wouldn't recognize him. Last Days of Mars, A Very Harold and Kumar Christmas, didn't watch those, so I wouldn't recognize him. But I did recognize him in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles from 1990. And so it didn't take long for me to realize that that's why he has very strong facial features. He has a very unique face about him. And so, you see that face. You eventually, you'll remember that. It's a face that you can remember. And I did that episode, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. That's episode 151. I did that with Jeff Moccalino from the Jeff Moccalino podcast. Also in this movie was Virginia Madson. She plays Catherine Henley. You may have seen her in Candyman. I actually did a review of that movie on the podcast called Movie Lovers Unite. And there's something about Candyman that is, I don't know, it's endearing in some kind of way. It's not like my favorite movie, but I was forced to watch Candyman 2 in a classroom. And so that's why Candyman as a franchise has a special place in my heart. There's also Sideways and The Haunting in Connecticut that you may have seen her in. Also, we have Eric Stoltz. He played Simon, and he's been in Pulp Fiction, The Butterfly Effect, and he was fantastic in the movie Mask. And he was almost Marty McFly, like almost. That's like the most famous trivia about Back to the Future is that he shot almost half of the movie before Steven Spielberg decided that he wasn't working out. Up next is Viggo Mortensen. He played Lucifer, and you may have seen him in The Road, Eastern Promises, or all of the Lord of the Ring movies. Mariah Shining Dove Snyder played Mary, and the only other film credit she has is in the Brady Bunch movie. And I think she did like maybe a couple of TV projects. She did not pursue acting. She only had 4 credits, I think, on her IMDb. Adam Goldberg played Jerry. You may have seen him in A Beautiful Mind or Saving Private Ryan. I covered that one in episode 171. Lastly, we have Steve Heitner. He played Joseph. You may have seen him in Eurotrip or Face Off. I think it's more of a blink and you'll miss some appearances. This movie was directed by Gregory Widen. This is his only movie, and he works more as a writer. So the only other writing credit that I thought I found was he wrote an episode of Tales of the Crypt, a TV show. This movie was directed by Gregory Widen. This is the only movie that he directed. He is more of a writer than he is a director. The only other thing that he directed besides this movie was one episode of Tales of the Crypt, a TV show. As a writer, he wrote Highlander, Backdraft, and Other Life. But like a lot of his credits have to do with Highlander, the series of Highlander. He's always giving credit for like creating the characters. And The Prophecy, he's always given credit for making the characters in The Prophecy. And I haven't heard of The Other Life, but I have heard of Backdraft. It's a fantastic movie. The music for this movie was composed by David C. Williams, and you may have heard his music in Ice Castles, Malone, The Invited, Bedeviled, or Dead Men Don't Die. I haven't heard of any of these movies. I don't know if these are indie films or they're international films or what, but the music in this movie was pretty good. He set the right mood. It had the angels singing. It was appropriate. And that's it for the opening credits. And for my announcements, I'm still working on that eBay shop, Bazaar de Alonso. But in the meantime, please go to backlookcinema.com/shop and check out the stickers, mugs, t-shirts, etc. And now let's move over to our next segment, our favorite parts. It was difficult to find the themes of this movie. So I had to think long and hard. It's one of those where the themes, at least for me, it was difficult. One of the themes I kind of picked up was don't talk to strangers. A lot of all of the kind of, especially children shouldn't talk to strangers. A lot of the adventure could have been avoided if the children just didn't talk to strangers. The other one is that when you find yourself in doubt, don't lose your faith. Maintain it. Trust in the system or trust in the process and do the rituals that your faith calls upon you to do to maintain your strength and have a belief in everything will work out. I think that is the overall message of this film, because in the story, when people lose faith, bad things are happening or bad things are allowed to happen or just corruption starts to overwhelm the individual because they lost faith. So I think that's the vibe I'm picking up considering the themes of this movie. So one of my favorite things about the movie is the whole mythology and world building of it. Like, the story was like well put together. I felt like it could have used some tightening up. It had some issues with the pacing. I think that there could have been a lot more interesting things that they could have done with the angels and the mythology. I think the mythology was well explained, but I felt like something more could have been done. It felt like I was looking at the first draft of the script. I feel like so much more could have been added to this movie to make it even more compelling and appealing. Because I'm really intrigued by when I watched this film. So, in the mythology of the film, there is a second war in heaven. The first war was when Lucifer was cast out and sent to hell with a host of his angels. And this is talking about the second war. And in the second war, there were some angels that never got over the concept of human beings having souls. And when humans were giving souls, they were exalted higher than angels. And there were a group of angels that could not accept that. And so they engaged in a rebellion, and they didn't want to be gods. They didn't want to take over heaven, but what they wanted was for heaven or the universe to be like it was before humans were created. And that is the state of affairs that these angels want to bring about. And they're going to war against the angels that are faithful to God's plan and God's mission. And essentially, I think it's the archangels. Michael is like the head of all of the angels and the head of the army of angels. So they're these rebellious angels going up against Michael and his forces. And this second war has been raging for centuries and centuries. So the rebellious angels decide that they need an edge. There's a prophecy of a dark soul, like a soul is so black that it eats other souls. This soul isn't inside of an angel. It's going to be inside of a human. The rebellious angels, they come down. Well, actually just 2 or 3 of them come down and they're looking for this man that has been prophesied, and this man has died. So they're looking for his dead body so they can get his soul. In this mythology, the souls can't go into heaven because there is a war in heaven. So the souls actually stay inside of the bodies, and nobody's actually going to heaven after they die. Some of them do go to hell though, because as Lucifer put it, hell is always open, even on Christmas. Seeing as how the rebel angels are looking for the soul, the faithful angels, the ones that are faithful to God, they are sent down, or at least one of them is sent down to find this soul first and to keep that soul away from the rebellious angels. And that is kind of the meat and potatoes of how this mythology works out in this movie. One of the main human figures in this movie is Thomas. And Thomas is, when we first meet Thomas, he is on the verge of becoming a priest. But what has dogged him is that he has these visions of angels. For some reason, he can actually see the war that's taking place, but he doesn't actually see angels fighting. What he sees is like dead and dying angels. He keeps having this vision of angels dying on what do you call those things? Pikes, but not on pikes. Like they're being impaled. He has visions of impaled angels. And so when he is about to be elevated to a priest, he has one of these visions, and he starts to scream, and he has a fit, and he has to quit the priesthood. And so he becomes a detective instead, because that's the natural progression from If you can't hack it of a priest, you can always be a police detective. So one of the neat things about angels is that they're weird. Yeah, they're depicted as weird in this movie. They're never depicted. Well, actually, when they're on Earth, they're not depicted as having wings. Thomas sees angels with wings in his vision. They have wings, they're wearing robes, but when they're on Earth, they just look like people. But as people, like I said, they act weird. They're stronger than regular people. That goes without saying, but it's like their behavior. It's like they don't like to sit. Instead, they perch on top of objects. So when Thomas first sees one of these angels on Earth, he goes into his apartment and this angel is perched on the back of his chair. Like he's standing on the part of the chair, which you would think is least capable of holding someone up. Like he's just like, and then other times you see angels standing on the edge. Well, they're not standing, they're perched. They're perched on the edge of buildings. Or one time you see Gabriel and he's perched on the edge of a tombstone. They like to perch. And that's a peculiar behavior that they have. I think in the trivia, I have that the director had wanted the angels to be bird-like. They kind of act like birds. So they're weird. And the other weird thing about angels is that they, like when one of them get killed, one of the angels gets killed. And it's taken to the police to get an autopsy because he was killed violently and run over by a car and so on and so forth. And so there are weird things about the angel's physiology. For one thing, the angels don't have eyes. They can disguise themselves to look like they have eyes so that they blend in with humans. But usually when they're not wearing a disguise, when they're not trying to blend in with humans, they don't have eyes at all, like never have eyes, just gaping holes in their faces where their eyes are supposed to be. And we're told that they're also hermaphrodites. They're male presenting, but they still have both sexual organs. So weird creatures. And they're supposed to be weird and unsettling creatures. One of the themes of this movie is like, if you can imagine an angel, it's what Thomas was telling the teacher. He was saying that whenever God wanted to do the dirty work, whenever he needed to smite someone or kill someone or maybe even lie to someone, he would send an angel. And can you imagine the type of being an angel must be, the type of being that their only purpose sometimes is to murder someone. So, and then he says, would you ever want to meet an angel? So this movie has a darker depiction of what angels could be. I alluded to one of the angels was killed. There was an angel fight in this hotel room. The other weird thing about angels is that when they're looking for each other or they're looking for a soul or anything in particular, they hunt with their sense of smell. You see them sniffing around, looking for stuff. So there's an angel called Uzziel. I want to say his name is Uzziel. And he finds this other angel named Simon. Uzziel is one of the rebel angels. Simon is loyal to Michael and God. And Uzziel is sniffing around. That's how he finds Simon in his hotel room. And Simon, for his part, he's just kind of minding his business. And then in the hotel, and he starts sniffing and he realized that Uzziel is nearby. He runs to the window just as Uzziel crashes through the window and they collide with each other. They have an angel fight. One of the things that Uzziel does during the fight is he's trying to dig into Simon's flesh. But Simon is able to get the upper hand and he tosses him out the window. And as Uzziel is hitting the ground, he also gets creamed by a car. So his body is crushed. In this story, angels can only be killed if their hearts are crushed or destroyed. I think maybe they can bleed out. They're not clear, but it definitely has something to do with their hearts. And because Uzziel was crushed by a car that presumably crushed his heart, and he dies, and that's when they get Detective Daggett, because they find a connection between what Daggett is Thomas, Detective Thomas Daggett. And so there's a connection with Thomas and this angel, because when they go to the apartment, they find a book, a thesis that Thomas wrote when he was trying to be a priest. And so they're kind of wondering, well, why would his thesis be in this apartment? The apartment is abandoned. Simon is gone. Simon just killed somebody and he fled. Simon happens to have the thesis because I guess he kind of lifted the book from Thomas's apartment, because he was in the apartment when he met Thomas. You know, Thomas being a police, you know, he pointed his gun like, "Who are you?" And Mike and Simon is able to de-escalate the situation and tell Thomas that something important is about to happen, and then basically leaves. It's unclear why Simon needed to talk to Thomas, except for the fact that Thomas at one point had actually seen the war in heaven. So maybe that's why Thomas is special. That's maybe why Simon needed to see Thomas, or that's probably why Simon was trying to get Thomas involved, because Simon, even though he didn't actually express that he needed Thomas's help, he appeared to Thomas in order to solicit himself, even though he didn't outright say it. That's one of the things that could have been ironed out by this movie. They could have made it more clear that Thomas needed, or Simon needed Thomas's help. Because otherwise, like, Thomas is there because he's seen his visions, but Simon is there because he needs to find this soul. And so why is he wasting time talking to Thomas unless he needed Thomas's help? As it turns out, Simon has found the soul, so he's trying to get to the soul before the rebels do. What's interesting about angels is that even though they don't know where this soul is, they do know all of the people on earth. Like, they know them by name. Like, whenever they never need to, the angels might introduce themselves, but they don't need you to tell them who you are. They already know. So that's kind of what I like about the angels. They can use it to the effect of being creepy, especially how Gable does it. He does it specifically to be creepy, or they can do it to try to de-escalate. Like when Simon appeared with Thomas in Thomas's apartment for the first time, he kind of, Thomas is pointing a gun at him and everything, and Simon is de-escalating him, calling him by his name, trying to calm him down. I think that's an interesting aspect of the angels, because it's not like they know you on a cursory level. It's almost like they know you on a personal level, like they know each and every person on earth. But at the same time, the rebellious angels, like I said, they hate the humans. They hate that the humans have souls and that humans are higher on the hierarchy than they are. And they hate that. One of the things that's kind of funny is how Gabriel is endlessly complaining about humans, like during the whole movie. And he denigrates humans by calling them monkeys, which is funny on a couple of levels. Like, he knows that, I don't know, is this a consideration that evolution is real and that he's pointing to evolution? Or maybe he's mocking people that believe in evolution by calling humans monkeys, even though he knows that humans are apes, but he calls them monkeys. So that's funny. He calls them talking monkeys, and that's how he shows his hate and contempt for human beings. Simon happens to find this dark soul, this evil soul that everyone is looking for. He happens to find a newspaper article, and I guess because angels kind of know humans already, when he finds a newspaper article of the obituary of this person that had just recently died, he knows that this is the dark soul. So he goes looking for where this man is being buried. This man used to live in a small town that's located near an Indian reservation or Native American reservation. I'm not sure which tribe, because it doesn't seem like they explicitly announce or mention which tribe this was, or if it was just a blend of, because they use a lot of people who look like Native Americans, but I don't know how authentic it was. I didn't dive deep into research, and it's not a whole lot of information talking about the actors who are involved in that part of the film. The Native American aspect was a huge part of this movie. So Simon is looking for and finds the body of this dark soul at the funeral. Like he's there first while the people are out front and they are, singing and praising and all this kind of stuff. And this is before the body is presented. So I'm not exactly sure what part of the funeral service this is, but he goes in the back before the body is presented to the people, and the soul is still in the body. The angels check for souls by opening people's mouths. So he opens up the corpse mouth. He sees that the soul is still in there. And then he inhales. He puts his lips on the corpse lips and he inhales the soul. But it also looks like a tongue kiss. This movie had a lot of homoerotic imagery, and it was like, it's kind of disturbing because I guess they want to use a lot of imagery that makes people uncomfortable. And I think the director knows that homoeroticism makes some people uncomfortable. So there's a lot of that in the movie. But the problem is that it's not presented in a good light. It's not really a good look. And it paints it as like deviant behavior. So I think that some people might find that problematic. At any rate, Simon inhales the soul of this dark soul. And this happens to be Colonel Arnold Hawthorne. And he's an evil dude. He's an evil dude, I guess. And then throughout the movie, they kind of present how evil he was. He's the type of dude that's committing war crimes, doing the type of things that are generally frowned upon during war. It's enough to just kill people, but like torturing them, like impaling your enemies. He's doing that type of stuff. So after Uzziel is killed, of course, Gabriel has come down. Actually, Gabriel has been down for a while. So both Gabriel and Uzziel have been looking for this dark soul. And that's what I mean by how this could have been expanded. It's like there's got to be a bunch of angels. Like there's got to be they could have had a dozen angels on earth looking for this body and not being able to find it. And they could have had like several angel battles, but the movie wasn't that long. And they didn't do expand on that aspect of the story. It feels really small because they only have like Uzziel and then Gabriel, which is the main angel, right? that he's in charge of the rebels. He's in charge of the rebellion. Gabriel is the angel of death, and he is like one of God's most trusted angels, or at least he used to be. Gabriel is going around, sniffing around, literally sniffing, finding where Simon used to be, finds Simon's his hotel room. And he's sniffing and he's licking stuff. And it's like, it's very primal way of looking for things. And this is how he starts to track Simon down. This is how he starts to track Thomas down, looking for the both of them, trying to find where this soul is. Gabriel also has like a familiar, like a witch would have a familiar, a witches carry around cats as their familiar, or like vampires have like Renfields to do their businesses during daylight hours, since vampires can't go out in the daytime, or because it's easier for a Renfield to blend in with human beings. Helpers, right? So Gabriel has a helper. His helper is a human that had committed suicide. And because Angel is the angel of death, well, because Gabriel is the angel of death, he brought Jerry back from the suicide. Actually, the way Gabriel explains it is that it's not that he brought Jerry back to life. It's that he slowed Jerry's death down. So technically Jerry is dead and still dying, but Gabriel is keeping him in a state between life and death. And Jerry tried to commit suicide and he really wants to die, and Gabriel won't let him die. And the thing about it is that it's probably uncomfortable to be in that state. He's constantly complaining to Gabriel that Gabriel won't let him just die. And Gabriel's like, no, I need you. I need you to do these things for me. And being on Earth, there are certain things that, like, he's limited he has a human body, so he's limited with what he can do. So he can't drive. So one of the things he has Jerry do is drive him around. And then the other thing is that he sends Jerry on errands. Like, one of the things that he asked Jerry to do is to go to the police evidence locker to get evidence on the dead body that they had found that happened to be Uzziel. And in the meantime, while Jerry is going to steal evidence, Gabriel goes to the morgue and he's going to destroy Uzziel's body ritualistically. And what's interesting is that when he first goes into the morgue, it's like one of my favorite things about the movie is Christopher Walken and how he interacts with other people. So, like, whenever he walks to a space and there's somebody who's trying to challenge them, he'll just tell them, shh, and then he'll push him down, and then they'll basically pass out. So when he walks to the morgue and somebody says, hey, you can't come in here, he says, shh, and he pushes them down, and they're out. And that's allows him to go and get the body and lays out the body, anoints the body with oil. And then as he walks away from the body and he sets the body on fire, he has this particular power where he can just set things on fire. And it must be magic fire because the body was burning pretty hot, but the alarm never went off. And it's like, apparently nobody ever finds out that there is a burnt body in the morgue until somebody walks in there, because, as I said, the alarms never go off. Meanwhile, Simon is just kind of limping around, and he hides in a abandoned portion of a school. And he's still hurt from that fight that he had with Uzziel. Uzziel really dug his fingers into Simon's flesh. So I guess Simon is like bleeding to death. That's the only thing that could account for his weakened state. Apparently he's not as powerful as Gabriel, because Gabriel, like, throughout the film, he's been shot, he's been blown up, and he keeps coming back, and he can be only destroyed in a particular way. But Simon has not nearly been as damaged as Gabriel, and yet Simon is like barely holding on. So Simon realizes that he can't continue to run away from Gabriel, and because he's in a weakened state. I don't know if he's about to die or if he's just weak, but he has to get this soul off of him so that when he's eventually found by Gabriel, Gabriel won't find the soul. So while he's hiding in the school, there's a bunch of kids that are playing hide and seek. Obviously, they're going to play hide and seek in the abandoned portion of the school during recess. And this little girl finds Simon. Eventually, Simon passes the dark soul to the little girl. I think that the girl is the only one who he asks what her name is. Because everybody else he knows. I think he just asked the little girl to put her at ease because he should know. And the girl's name is Mary. And he tells Mary to come here. I want to tell you a secret. What Simon does is that he brings the girl close to him. And this is like a 4-year-old. No, maybe not 4. Maybe she's like 11 or 12. And he opens her mouth a little bit, and then he exhales the soul into the little girl, except it looks like a kiss, and it don't look right. Like I said, they're trying to unsettle people with this type of imagery. It don't look right. Not, because now he's playing with pedophilic imagery, and that's not cool. I wish they hadn't have done that in this movie, but that's what they're playing around with. But anyway, he essentially, you could look at it as like mouth to mouth resuscitation, but unfortunately it looks like a kiss. But anyway, he exhales the soul into Mary, and I guess humans aren't really meant to be holding multiple souls. She's got her own soul, and now she's got this dark soul that's like super evil, and like it immediately makes her sick, and she's coughing and she's choking. She asks the teacher to take her home. The teacher, Catherine Henley, takes her home because she's like really messed up, and she only seems to get worse. And then she's saying stuff that don't make sense. We're saying things that 11-year-old girls shouldn't be saying. Now, just as Simon predicted, Gabriel tracks him down. He's still in the abandoned portion of the school. Gabriel asks for the soul. Simon doesn't want to give up the soul. It's like Simon is trying to get away and he's trying to fight, but he can't because he's already injured. And then one time he tries to run away and he gets tripped up by Jerry. So that was kind of funny. Christopher Walken, or I should say Gabriel, he tries to torture Simon into giving him the information, telling him where the soul of Hawthorne is. And Simon is steadfast and faithful. He doesn't give him the information. So Gabriel burns him, and then he puts out the fire, and he tells him, I can keep this going for all eternity. But Simon is not giving up the information. And then Gabriel realizes that Simon's not going to. So he rips out Simon's heart and crushes it. And this kills Simon once and for all. At the same time, Detective Thomas Daggett, and he's on the trail. So he knows that because of that seminary book that this has to involve that angel that he met, Simon. And so that leads him to the school where I'm not exactly sure how he figured out that Simon was hiding out in the school or what led him to the school. I think he was on the same trail as Simon was, because he needs to find out why Simon is involved. He didn't tell the rest of his police cadre that the suspect who murdered the guy with no eyes has a book that he wrote when he was in seminary. So he doesn't want to tell his fellow police officers that he met that guy. That guy was in his house, perched on the back of a chair. And he thinks that guy might be an angel. And he doesn't want to reveal that information. But when they go through the evidence, they find this article on Hawthorne. So Thomas follows that evidence, and that leads him to the town where Hawthorne was buried. And I think that's what leads him to the school. And he goes upstairs, and he's actually, I think it was the dead body. I think the burnt to a crisp, because Gabriel eventually burns Thomas to a crisp. After he rips his heart out, he burns Thomas's body, and then he and Jerry leaves. So the school calls the police. The police is doing an investigation, and Thomas, it's not like they call Thomas to help with the investigation, but he ends up going up there, and then in the ashes, he finds this pendant that he knew the angel had. And so that leads him to question anybody that might know anything about this homeless guy who happened to be Simon hanging out in the abandoned part of the school. And by chance, he runs into Catherine. Catherine knows that one of her students has been talking to this angel, and that leads him to Mary. And while all this is going on, Gabriel can see that the detective is on the case. Like he's watching the detective, and then he's also pestering the detective, basically kind of trolling the detective a little bit. I guess he's egging the detective on. I'm not exactly sure what his motive was in pestering the detective, but he does do a little bit of that. Gabriel also is following the same clues that Thomas is, and he also finds the colonel's body. He actually has that at this point the colonel's already buried. Gabriel thinks that the colonel still has his soul, or the soul is still inside of the body. And remember, in this mythology, nobody's going to heaven because there's a war in heaven, and not everybody goes to hell right away. So people's souls are kind of stuck in their bodies. And I think that because of the dark soul is part of this prophecy, the dark soul is definitely going to stay inside of the body. So he has Jerry dig up the grave. And this is kind of a funny part where Jerry's digging up this grave, and Gabriel is just perched at the head of the tombstone, perched like a bird, like I mentioned before. And Jerry is kind of fed up with this. Well, he's been fed up with this situation that he's in. And he looks up at Gabriel's like, you're just gonna stand there and watch me work? And Gabriel's like, I like watching you work. They dig up the grave. One of them opens the coffin, and Gabriel looks for the soul, and the soul isn't there. So that means he has to keep, that's what led him to realize that Simon had the soul, or had to have taken the soul. And then he goes to find Simon. Simon doesn't have the soul. So now he's got to look and find out where Simon hid the soul. And I think that's why he started to follow and pester the detective, because he knows the detective is a little bit ahead of him. One of the things that Gabriel does is, I guess he suspects that because Simon was hiding in the school, that he may have given it to one of the little kids. So he's sitting with the kids while the teacher's away. I guess it's probably during one of the recesses. And he's showing them this trumpet. And he said, it's a very special trumpet. Just put your lips on it and blow. And one of the kids blows in the trumpet, and the trumpet shatters one of the windows in the school, because it's the trumpet that Gabriel is going to use at the end of time, or during Revelations. It's a trumpet of destruction. So he's playing around with the kids, and he's tricking the kids to open his mouth so he can see if these kids have the soul. So like the kid that blew the trumpet, he's going to give the kid a mint. So he tells the kid to open wide. And while the kid's mouth is open, he's looking in the mouth to see if there's a soul in there. And there's a little girl next, and he's looking in her mouth to see if she has a soul. And then that's when Catherine shows up, and she's like, who are you? And this is one of those things where Gabriel knows Catherine's name and calls her by her name. Tells her, oh no, we're just having fun. And she says, I think you should leave. He's like, yeah, you're right. I should leave. You have no idea what's going on, or whatever. And then, cause of course she doesn't know what's going on. There's a weird old dude playing with children. It ain't right. Surprisingly, Gabriel walks away from that peacefully. But that was one of my favorite parts with him. That's one of the parts that I remember from when I first watched the movie, is him looking in the little kids' mouths, looking for this soul. Eventually, Catherine teams up with Detective Thomas Daggett, and she knows where the he kind of convinces her that the angels are real and they're on earth and they're doing some things. And she's seen enough with the little girl. Like, she's still sick and she's still saying weird things. She's saying things like,
"You ever cut off a Chinaman's head? They don't bleed like we do. Or maybe it was the winter."
She's saying, and then she's drawing stuff where she's drawing stick figures where the stick figures are being impaled, because this is something that the colonel used to do. The colonel's like influencing her behavior, and she's sick at the same time. And her tribe, like, she's a Native American, and the members of her tribe they realize that she has what they call an enemy ghost inside of her body. So they're going to attempt to excise the ghost. So they're going to take her to a ceremony where they can get rid of that ghost. At the same time, well, it's around that time that, like I said, Thomas and Catherine, they team up. They go to the place where they go to a cave where Catherine had seen Jerry's car parked, because she noticed that, it was that time when Gabriel was with the kids looking into their mouths when they were at the school. She must have seen Gabriel get into his car. And then she noticed that same car was parked near a cave. So she leads Thomas to that cave where these two where apparently Gabriel and Jerry had been hanging out, and they go and look into the cave, and there's all this angelic script all over the walls of the cave. Apparently they've been there for weeks or whatever, decking, and Gabriel probably writing all over the cave walls. And then they both mutually have a vision of all of these angels on spikes. It just kind of spontaneous. They see a vision of like a field of thousands of angels all impaled on spikes. And they freak out. They throw fire at the vision, and it hits the cave wall, and they leave. So they realize that, all of this it's like confirmation. Since they both saw the vision, it's like confirmation that the war in heaven is real and that angels are real. It's like a confirmation of their faith. So they realize that Mary is sick because she has this dark soul in her. She's being possessed by this soul. They race back to Mary's home. Gabriel is already there with Jerry, and then a struggle ensues. It's in this struggle that Gabriel gives a speech about how he was the angel of death, and he kills the firstborn while their mamas watch. I think this is in reference to, there is an event in the Old Testament where God sent a plague among Egypt, and I think the final plague was when the firstborn of every household was killed. And it was Gabriel that did that. And like, Gabriel is like, this is what he does. Gabriel is like, I'm not new to this. I'm true to this. That's his whole attitude towards being the angel of death. At any rate, in this struggle, it's like they shoot him a couple of times. And then when he goes after the girl shoots him. So he can be, how do I put it? Like, it slows him down. It slows him down when he gets shot. And that gives the humans a chance to get away. Daggett is like thrown out the trailer by Gabriel. But Catherine is able to get Mary out of the trailer. And she also managed to get the gun. She got the gun from Mary. And so Gabriel walks out the trailer and starts walking towards him. And she starts shooting at the fuel tank that's near the trailer. And then the fuel tank explodes. It seems to cause the whole trailer to explode. And Gabriel gets caught in the explosion. And Thomas miraculously moves out of the way and is somehow unharmed by this fiery explosion. At the same time, Gabriel isn't burned, but he's thrown pretty hard. And the police get there. They think that Gabriel is dead, and they're just going to wait from the corner. And Daggett convinces them to cuff the body, even though they think he's dead. He's saying that it's not dead. You got to cuff the body. Because he's seen Gabriel just get shot and just kind of walk it off. They put the presumably dead Gabriel in the back of the police car. Gabriel opens his eyes and he winks at Daggett. But Daggett is too weak to call the police and tell them that, or call after the police and tell them that, he woke up. And then when they're driving down the road, they see the wreckage of the police car and the dead policeman. And Catherine wants to stop and see if she can help the policeman. And Tom's like, nope, just go. Let's just take the little girl so she can get this exorcism. Gabriel gets upset because during the struggle, Thomas finally kills Jerry. Like in the struggle, he shoots Jerry 5 times. And then Jerry was like, thanks, man, you're a sport, or something like that. Because now Jerry can finally die. And he shoots Jerry in the head. And Jerry is, he has like a final death or a confirmed death. It's like he knows that he accomplished his mission of, well, not accomplished mission. It's like Thomas completed the suicide. And at that point, after Jerry was killed, Gabriel was upset with Thomas. He's like, you moron, do you know how hard it is to get one of those things? So that was kind of funny. So Gabriel has to get a new familiar, a new human. He has to go to a hospital. He puts somebody else to sleep that tries to keep him from going into the ICU. Like the nurse is like, you can't go back there. And he puts her to sleep. And then he goes and he looks at different charts. And like he can tell somebody's about to die because he can smell it. But he doesn't know exactly which person. So he looks at their chart that they have at the end of the bed to see what their prognosis was. And he doesn't want somebody who like he's recovering or who is not that badly harmed, but he finds a woman whose death is imminent. At least that's what her chart says. So he goes in there, and then as she's about to die, he brings her back to not life, but that near death place that Jerry was in. And what was funny about that is that when she wakes up, she immediately realizes that, or she recognizes that Gabriel is an angel and that she's not dead. And it's like she's in that uncomfortable position of being is in that place between life and death. And she wants to cry, but Gabriel says, stop that. Don't do that. I hate it when you do that. The other thing that's funny about Gabriel is that he's okay with all types of curse words. He even curses a little himself, but he hates when people say, God damn it. Cause he's always like, watch the profanity. He hates that. And I think that's amusing about this film. So my favorite scene of the movie is when Lucifer shows up. Lucifer, played by Viggo Mortensen. That's like one of the things I remember from this film. Like I only seen it like maybe once when or maybe a couple of times when it first came out. And I actually remember seeing it in theaters. And even back then, I didn't know who Viggo Mortensen was, but it was still my favorite part of the movie. So this is after Catherine and Thomas get to the place where it's like way out in the desert, where Mary's tribe is going to do a ceremony where they're going to exorcise the spirit from her body. So they in there and they're chanting and they're praying and they're playing the instruments to get the soul out of her body. And she goes outside for a walk and she sees a man perched on like a fence or perched on a tree, and perched like a bird. It's like 2 of them, but one is really perched like a bird. One of them looks like a zombie or like more like a creature than a human. And the other one looks like a beautiful man, and he's perched like a bird. So, she knows immediately. She instinctively, she asks if he was an angel, and he responds, I am the first angel. And there's something about that I love. I love that part. And then they have a conversation and he talks about, the perfect love that he had and then the love faded. So he's there because he has a proposal for Mary and he understands what Gabriel is trying to do. Cause she asked him, are you a part of this? And Lucifer was like, no, but there are angels who hate you. And I'm not here to help you. I hate you too. But Gabriel wants to bring about he wants to have a war in heaven, and he wants to end the war. And if Gabriel wins, then his version of heaven will be just another hell. And I can't have that. And he makes a bargain with Catherine in that if she does her part to stop Gabriel, then that will allow essentially God's army to win the war. And then the souls that have been trapped on earth can go to heaven. So that's what's in it for her. So she agrees to this, and Satan, I guess, buggers off. What's interesting, this is kind of a tangent, but what's interesting about Satan is that even when you read the Bible, it doesn't seem like he ever actually lies. Like we always say all the time that the devil is a lie. But in the Bible, it doesn't seem that, at least when you examine it from a biblical scholar perspective, he doesn't actually lie. And so when I look at it from that perspective, when Lucifer makes this bargain with Catherine, he's actually telling the truth. But in this film, he does lie a little bit. So it's not like he's gonna, or not gonna lie. But anyways, I love that. And there's also a part where the devil has a meeting with Thomas and basically give Thomas clues to help him figure out how to defeat Gabriel. Since the ceremony is taking place on the top of a butte, Thomas and Catherine, they're looking down the road and they can see that there's a car coming towards them. And so they know that that has to be Gabriel. So they make preparations. They set up a little bit of a booby trap. And so when Gabriel finally gets there, you know, they jack up the car, they shoot him, they doing, you know, all the things to stop Gabriel. There's like a huge fight ensues. This is a very exciting fight that's near the end of the movie. And all the while Catherine and Thomas are fighting Gabriel, there is the tribe is still in the process of exercising the enemy ghost. And there is a point where Gabriel gets inside the hut. Like he crashes and walks into the hut, and Simon gets into the car. And so when Gabriel starts approaching the tribe and Mary, and the only person standing between Mary and Gabriel is Catherine. Catherine shoots Gabriel, but there's only one bullet in the gun, but that slows him down enough. Meanwhile, Thomas is outside. He gets into the car. He drives the car through the hut. Somehow he's able to hit Gabriel and not hit Catherine because Catherine is nearby. But, and that damages him more. And then he finds a tire iron and he starts whacking Gabriel with it. And then he stops. Lucifer shows up and Lucifer basically takes over, and some more licking and hugging, that sort of thing with the angels. Basically, it's Lucifer telling Gabriel that, you have the sin of pride or something like that. And, that's evil and that's mine, evil is mine. So he digs his hand into Gabriel's chest and rips out Gabriel's heart. And because he's the devil and he has to be the grossest person on the scene, he bites into the heart. At the same time, the exorcism works. The tribe is able to excise the demon or the dark soul out of Mary. And you can see it as a dark shape. At the same time, heaven opens up and heavenly light is cast on the demon or the soul, and the soul is destroyed or eradicated. So, and then Mary is immediately back to normal. She's well again. And Gabriel is fully defeated because without the soul, he can't win the war. And then he dies, and then Satan's minion starts to drag Gabriel. Well, I guess he's going to drag Gabriel's body down to hell. I guess that's the whole thing. I'm not exactly sure on how angels die, because even though this film makes it apparent that angels die when you destroy their hearts, It's unclear if angels have a soul or not, because they mention humans having souls, but they're not talking about whether or not angels have souls. It's all kind of confusing. But the minion takes Gabriel's body, so apparently there's some significance to that. Plus, there are 5 sequels to the prophecy, and the prophecy 2 and the prophecy 3, Christopher Walken returns, and he's in both of those movies as Gabriel. So I didn't watch those movies, so I don't exactly know how Gabriel came back to life. At any rate, the devil at this point, he starts freaking out, and he tries to tempt both Thomas and Catherine to come with him. He says, come with me. I love you more than Jesus. But that's so funny. It's the creepiest that Lucifer is in this film, especially with angel blood dripping down his mouth. Thomas and Catherine, they don't fall for it. And so basically, Lucifer's like, you'll regret that, or whatever people say, you don't do what they ask you to do. But that was one of my favorite parts, because like I said, he was the creepiest in that part. And then he kind of walks away. And that's basically it. It's like everybody is, I don't want to say happily ever after, but they're better off than when they started. They all kind of maintain their faith, I guess. So that was the prophecy. And I know I was rambling through my favorite parts. I was basically telling the story. But the thing is, it's like, I guess it comes down to Christopher Walken, the mythology, some of the angel fights, and Viggo Mortensen as Lucifer. Those were all great. Now let's move over to the trivia. This is the top 10 trivia that I was able to find on IMDb. And in the first bit of trivia, we have the film was followed by the sequel, The Prophecy 2, in 1998, which was intended as a theatrical release that ultimately went straight to video. So that tends to happen. Viggo Mortensen claims that prior to shooting their scene together, Christopher Walken ate several whole garlic cloves. Both Mortensen and Virginia Madson said Walken was constantly eating raw garlic between takes. Said Madson, quote, he reeked. I mean, you could smell Chris from like 6 feet away. You knew he was coming around because people would go, oh God, Chris is here. I think he was doing it on purpose for that role. I never confirmed that, but I think he wanted people to have a kind of revulsion around him. End quote. I guess it kind of worked. I watched the movie a second time to see if people were like physically revulsion, but it doesn't really look any different from just ordinary acting. But I'm pretty sure that they were actually repulsed from all of the garlic. The writer-director is also the writer for the original Highlander film in 1986. Similar tropes can be found between the two movies. Immortals at war. For centuries, they wear trench coats, and both stories begin near the climax of a much larger history of the characters. Colonel Arnold Hawthorne is played by Patrick McAllister. Due to the nature of his role and the long gap after It's Alive from 1974, McAllister is not credited, but he appears as special thanks for his collaboration in the movie. Credited as Patrick Curley McAllister. I didn't even notice when I was doing the research for this film that he's not credited as an actor. So that's interesting. This is the second movie where I see an actor that's prominently featured that wasn't actually credited. I mean, not as a cameo, because you see sometimes there's a cameo appearance and the actor doing the cameo is not credited. But this is different. Like, he's in the movie. He's one of the characters and he's not credited. The only other time I've seen this happen was in Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. There is a character that's basically Khan's second in command. He is the main character and he is not at all credited in the movie, and he's not credited because his agent made a bad contract, and I don't know how such contracts can be written where you write yourself out of being credited in the movie, but apparently that is a thing that can happen. Gabriel tries checking all the school kids to see if he can find if they had Hawthorne's soul stuffed into them. As part of doing so, he lets a couple of them blow on a horn he has. Gabriel blowing his horn is supposed to be the sign of the end of the world, but cautions to do so very carefully and just a little bit at a time. Yeah, that was definitely one of my favorite parts of the movie. Gabriel and the little kids and the horn. They don't actually explicitly explain what the trumpet is for. And I didn't even realize it until I read this bit of trivia. There are multiple religious references with varying levels of subtlety. When Simon is told that the girl he's about to hide Hawthorne's soul is inside is named Mary, he whispers, "Of course." Interesting to note, even watching this twice, I didn't hear Simon whisper, "Of course." I was listening for it, but I didn't see it. So I don't know if this is just in the script or maybe this is in a different version of the film. Then you have less than obvious ones like Thomas, the priest who lost faith, being named after the apostle who didn't believe Jesus had come back to life. Or in the Bible, Gabriel had the power to make people fall down in shock with the mere presence that he had. And also helped the prophet Daniel with his apocalyptic visions. I'm not sure if he's actually helping anybody with visions in this movie, but there is a thing where he does this. He goes, shh, and he touches people and they fall out. There's that, which I always find that amusing. In a bit of truly inspired foreshadowing, in 1993, 2 years before this film's release, Christopher Walken played an eerily similar role to that of his portrayal of the Archangel Gabriel in The Prophecy. In the Madonna video for the song Bad Girl from her album Erotica, Walken plays the Angel of Death who silently follows a woman who is Madonna as she's being destroyed by her lifestyle. Though there's no speaking part, his mannerisms and look are strikingly similar to his later depiction of Gabriel, even down to the slick back hair, the pale complexion, and mostly black wardrobe. It should be noted that The Prophecy was also filmed in 1993, so it's conceivable that both the video and the film were shot around the same time, which would account for why Walken looked the same in that music video as he did as Gabriel in the movie. According to Virginia Madson, the production was chronically behind, especially the script. Viggo Mortensen offered to write some of his own dialogue and came up with Lucifer's introductory speech himself. He may have been the one that came up with when Mary asks, "Are you an angel?" I imagine he wrote, "I am the first angel," because that's one of my favorite lines in the film. Searching through Uzziel's belongings, Thomas Daggett finds a handwritten ancient Bible that includes chapter 23 of John the Apostle's book of Revelation, the Apocalypse. He translates part of it as, "And there were angels who could not accept the lifting of man above them, and like Lucifer, rebelled against the armies of the loyal Archangel Michael. And there arose a second war in heaven." As Daggett states to Joseph, the book of Revelation actually only has 22 chapters. This 23rd chapter was created specifically as part of the plot. And the last bit of trivia, birds are used to symbolize the angels. For example, Gabriel perches on a bench and looks exactly like a bird in a silhouette. Yeah, there's a lot of perching going on. All of the angels do some kind of perching in this movie. At the end of the movie, Lucifer explodes into crows when departing. That's part of the bird imagery. Also, there's the way they kind of look and stare at things. It's a lot of bird-like imagery in the movie. And apparently in some of the other films, they continue with this theme. Also, I watched the Bad Girl video that Madonna did, and not my favorite Madonna song, but it's an interesting film where Madonna has this, like a self-destructive lifestyle. You know, she's sleeping with a bunch of men. She's smoking cigarette. She's presumably eating bad food. And it's like it opens on the dead body of a woman who happens to be Madonna. And then like the angel of death is kind of like following her around, presumably because he knows that she's about to die. And it's like, I guess he wants to interfere and try to stop her from her self-destructive lifestyle, but she won't. At the end of the video, he comes down, he kisses her, he walks away, and then the man she's on a date with, he eventually murders her. And then like the angel of death and the spirit of the woman, they're watching from above as the police and the EMT or whoever shows up, I guess it's the coroner at that point, they show up to remove her dead body from the apartment. I don't know if they catch the guy who murdered her. And that's it for the trivia. Now let's check out what the critics thought. The critics have it at 46%. The audience score is at 64% on Rotten Tomatoes. And IMDb Reviews has it at 6.4 out of 10. So, same, at least with where the audience is concerned. Caffeinated Clint from Movie Hole wrote, top-notch combination of supernatural thrills and Walken-esque sensation. And I agree with that wholeheartedly. Bob Bloom from Journal and Courier in Lafayette, Indiana wrote, angels battling on earth, a hammy Walken, church is more interesting. I don't know. I would say it depends on what church. Like if you're talking about like the type of gospel church that I grew up in, then yeah, that could be considered more interesting than this movie. But if we're talking about like a quiet, solemn service, then I would say no, not more interesting. Rob Vo from Flipside Movie Emporium wrote, Paradise Lost reimagined as a droll B-horror picture. Walken is terrific as always, and Viggo Mortensen's cameo is worth the price of admission alone. Yeah, I agree with that. I'm down with that. Rob Gonsalves from Rob's Movie Vault wrote, I like to think that Walken flipped through the script, realized how lame it was, and decided to have some fun anyway. I can see that perspective. I can't hate on that perspective of the movie. Finally, The Prophecy is, as of this recording, available on Paramount Plus. There's this movie that I hadn't seen in decades, and I venture to say that I've only seen it once. I remember loving the film at the time, and I've been curious if I'd like it now. Join me next time when we talk about Stephen King's Silver Bullet. You can follow us on Blue Sky, Threads, TikTok, Instagram, and sometimes Twitter. Please contact us with any questions, comments, or suggestions at fanmail@backlookcinema.com. Please rate and review on your favorite podcast app. And if you're listening on YouTube, please like or subscribe or leave a comment below. I'd love to hear from you. One last time, if you like this show, then please help us grow by spreading the word about Backlook Cinema, the podcast. Believe me, it matters. I've been Zoe Richardson. Be safe, share a movie from yesteryear with your family, hug your loved ones, and if you're going to be anything, be outstanding.